Hey there, darlings. It is a beautiful, dewy morning, and I am making my way to the berry patch. As you can see, it is now blackberry season. I'm not sure how many of these are going to make it in the house because they are gloriously, perfectly ripe. On second thought, some of these are a little buggy, so I think maybe a saltwater soak is in order before I partake of many of them. They are incredibly delicious though. Ideally, I like to pick berries like blackberries early in the morning, really before the sun has gotten up real bright, because they're just juiciest at that point. These are the prime arc thornless blackberries. We planted these, was it last year? I think it was last year, from Stark Bros. We got little starts. They were not large. You do not have to spend the extra on bigger plants when it comes to stuff like this, because you know they're really not going to produce a ton until the second year anyway, and they grow really fast. This is a 2-quart bowl, almost full, from this little 6-foot section. I didn't even get to the other side. I'll go until my bowl is full, and then I'll pick the rest of these tomorrow morning. So if you've been here with me for long, you have no doubt heard me talk about foraging blackberries. When I was much younger, whenever I was just absolutely desperately dreaming of having a farm and being able to grow our own food, I lived in a rent house, and we were really strapped for money, and it was impossible. Like, the dream was impossible. I would look at real estate, I would look at all of these things. I couldn't even put a big garden in where I was, and I was so desperate to just like sink my teeth in to the homesteading lifestyle, and I would even try to like go shop at the farmer's market and stuff, but it was so expensive and everything just felt so impossible. And I had a friend who invited me to go forage wild blackberries with her. And we would go out and pick gallons of these berries. And I was so tenacious about it, because it was like, finally, here is some food security. Here is something along the lines of what I'm dreaming of that I can actually have. And for at least a few years, I spent every summer just picking every bit of wild blackberries I could. As soon as the season started, I would be out there once or twice a week, and sometimes I would be out for hours picking everything that I could find so I could bring home 2 gallons of berries and freeze them. And I learned to can with those berries, and I learned to make so many different things. Actually, my love of foraging wild berries and the fact that they grew all over the roadsides whenever I lived in Arkansas was why it took me so long to actually plant berries, because I was like, I don't need to plant those, I have them. I will tell you that picking cultivated blackberries is a little bit of a different experience. One, these are thornless canes, and so I'm not getting completely shredded by them, which is definitely nice. But these berries are bred to be big and juicy, and they're definitely a different product than those wild blackberries. However, wild blackberries will always have a special place in my heart, because they were just kind of the gateway into growing your own food, or obtaining your food outside of the mainstream norm of just going to the store and buying it. For me, as a girl who was raised in suburbia, and it all just felt so foreign to me. And now it's like a normal way of living. But the blackberries definitely have a special place in my heart. The hardest part of berry picking is knowing when to walk away. You'll be standing there with your bowl like precariously stacking them up on top, and you'll be like, oh, but there's one more. Oh, but that one looks really juicy. You This is really hard whenever you're picking berries to call it and be like, this is enough for this moment. I can come back a little bit later. Like, look, I just spotted this cluster. You also have to pick like from the top, and then you have to get down low, move branches aside, which is why the thornless blackberries are so nice, because you can just pick them up, whereas with the thorn ones it's not so easy. Okay, I really do have to walk away. Quite a few little sluggies on these, so I'm just gonna go inside and put them in a big bowl. I'm gonna go inside and soak these. I'll show y'all how. With berries, they can have little buggies in the nooks and crannies. These have got a lot of tiny little slugs on them. So it's pretty easy to get them off though. And honestly, even when you're picking them wild, if you don't see anything on them, I still like to soak them for good measure, because with all those nooks and crannies, stuff can get down in there. But I would rather have organic berries that the bugs want to eat any day, rather than having them so sprayed with chemicals that the bugs don't even want to eat them. I've raised a house full of avid tea drinkers, so our electric kettle is never cool. It's always pretty warm because somebody's heating up water all throughout the day. And this comes in really handy. You don't have to obviously have like boiling water to do this, but it just speeds it up. I don't want to put my berries in warm water or hot water because I don't want them to get like more mushy. But if I put salt in cold water, it's going to take a little while to dissolve. So what I do is put a couple of tablespoons of salt into a bowl and pour just a splash of hot water on them. That was a big splash. It was a full kettle. And then swish it around for that salt to get good and dissolved. You know, sometimes it takes a minute or so. And then once your salt is like where you can't see it anymore, then add some cold water to it. And then I'll put my berries in. And I'll go ahead and just top this off with water from the sink. Yeah, you can see they're starting to come out. In about 20 minutes, they'll all be floating up on the top. And you can just pour the water out, and obviously all the bugs go with it, and then rinse them. And if you are freaked out by this, you can do it a second time just to make super sure. And then once you don't see any bugs floating, you know you got them. So if anybody's feeling freaked out about the worms and the blackberries, you're not alone.
Oh no, that's totally disgusting. She's like, what, you're not going to eat these? I said, you can bake something. We'll have a nice, like, blackberry worm reduction sauce.
I'm getting them out.
Well, I mean, if you don't get them all out, I want to make sure that we ain't finding them later.
So that was just that small bowl of berries, and I put it in with probably, it leveled out to be about 2 quarts of water. If you're doing like a whole gallon of water, you would want to do like a 1/4 cup. Think about a tablespoon-ish, you could go a little heavier if you wanted to, per quart of water that you're going to soak in. And lemon juice can also help. But this is actually a topic that I think should be discussed a little bit more. And it's funny because I was sharing about my foraging of wild blackberries. And actually that is when I learned to do the saltwater soak. Because I remember, you know, I was bringing these berries home, I was making stuff with them, and I froze some. Upon thawing them, when they were freezing, essentially these insects had come out of the berries. And I was so freaked out. And I will say that as a person who was raised in suburbia and who primarily saw food as something that comes from the grocery store, the nature of how it actually comes was a little bewildering to me. That's okay. Like, I feel like we just should make space for things like that if we're going to learn to live in a very different way than we always have. There's going to be adjustments. So that's where we have our t-shirts that we sell. That is like our best-selling shirt design of all time that says "Real food comes dirty."
It's also wiggling.
I don't think that shirt would do as well. Real food wiggles some.
Real food has just a little wiggle in it.
So I rinsed these off, and I actually decided to do a second soak. This time I just sprinkled the salt in and put the water on, and it'll settle down in there. I'm about to go outside, so it'll have time. there were just a lot of little wormies on that. I want to make sure that there are not a lot of little wormies on it whenever I'm ready to eat them. I don't see anything else coming up in the second soak, but I just decided to do it for my peace of mind. Bear can be completely conked out, and if he senses in his little spidey senses me going to the door with my camera, he knows it's go time. If I'm walking with my keys, he won't even get up, but if I have my camera, he's like, let's go. I decided while we were on the topic of berries that I would drive down here and check my mulberry tree, which I've already picked a few berries off of, but not a lot. Getting down to the end of this driveway was a test of my will and determination not to get distracted, because I just saw about 40 things in the garden that I wanted to stop. It is just, there's so much. I could probably easily film like at least an hour of wandering around the garden and showing different things every single day. Seriously, because there's just so much to see. See, I'm getting distracted even walking. I made it all the way down here. Look at these calla lilies. Can y'all even? I've already cut multiple bouquets and they just keep putting on flowers, and I know every year I have a new favorite flower, but this year it's these. And my puny little peppers that were so small are catching up. The other day I turned the sprinkler on before I left to go to my office. I was a guest on a podcast that went kind of late, so I didn't get home till like 10. And I had asked Maya to turn the sprinkler off, and he had forgotten. So whenever I asked him, I'm like, hey, did you remember turning the sprinkler off? You should have seen the look on his face. It was like deer caught in the headlights. And then it rained a lot the next day. So when it rains, water pools into this tunnel. So this is definitely a place I'll be working in boots for the next couple of days, because there's like a lot of water in there. It is kind of annoying, but the plants like it. And we're on a very deep well, so thankfully forgetting to turn the water off it's not the same mistake that it used to be like back when we were on city water. So Maya and I have been discussing this orchard area, and you know, we had all of these trees wrapped in these cages for when the geese were all in here and the trees were really small. We're going on, it's about the 3rd year that these are planted, or maybe it's like 2.5 years because we planted them in the fall. I think we're gonna spend like a whole day soon just cutting these cages off and cleaning up all around them. All the weeds and the stuff that grew up in there was actually a real benefit when these trees were small, because it kind of shielded the trunks and allowed them to grow, but at this point I don't want them having to compete. Here's the mulberry tree, and look at that. Still just a few berries here and there out here. You know, it may not produce just a ton this year. Will has a really big mulberry bush out at his house that produces a lot. And last year, when they had their little boy, I was out there like shortly after he was born getting some baby snuggles and took them some of Taylor's favorite lasagna. And Will brought me in this bowl of mulberries that were, I mean, absolutely delicious. This is a jujube tree. Last year it put a lot of fruit on, and then something got them all. Like right as they started to ripen, I came out here one day and they were like all gone. And here, they've got quite a few figs. I needed to have pruned my peaches more aggressively. I really got too nervous, and now my trees are really way too big. And we're getting ready to plant a few more like semi-dwarf peach trees down in the kind of by where those blackberries we were picking this morning. I'm thinking of doing that area where we have those pit swales into like a food forest. And I'm going to put some more peach trees. I got some semi-dwarf varieties to put in there, and I'm thinking I'm going to try to get my hands on some wood chips and like layer them in there really good and turn that little area into a fenced in like food forest area. Funny, I noticed this when I was out here a couple weeks ago. Look at this. Growing all around this apple is, I don't know if this is actually a blackberry or if this would be a, what are they, dewberries? There are a few that look like blackberries, but we got some fruit here growing wild up with the apple tree. People told me that apples did not do well here because we don't have enough chill hours. I had to try, and it turns out they were right. But it's okay. We may get a couple. This is, however, the land where peaches grow. These 3-year-old trees are almost 2 dads tall. I may have just had beginner's luck with peaches last year. I got like a bushel of peaches, and I've pruned some of the fruit off of these, but God, I'm waiting to see what happens. You're supposed to pull the fruit off anywhere that 2 are touching, or see, I've heard some people say that, and I've heard some people say just pull them off where you have clusters of more than 3. So I'm kind of just waiting to see. I find learning to be difficult on subjects that people have a lot of expertise and speak in a lot of absolutes. I've watched a lot of different fruit content, and I found some really great people that teach it. But the problem is when I have a problem and I'm just like searching for an answer to a problem, I find a lot of like always and never advice, which is like always do this, never do that. When it comes to growing anything, I really prefer for information to be presented as like this is ideal or this may be best in some areas, because I just don't think that there's anything gardening wise that can really be always and never when you're speaking to a worldwide audience. So I have had many people tell me that I absolutely cannot grow organic peaches here in this area of the country. Now, peaches grow like crazy here. Like, you know, you hear a lot about Georgia peaches, but like the western part of South Carolina, especially the middle part of the state, is where a ton of peaches are grown, and there are peach orchards all around us. And of course they're heavily sprayed with chemicals, but I'm assuming that if I have any hope of growing them organically, it's going to be with really mindful pruning and supporting with things like worm compost teas. We have sprayed the trees with worm compost teas. It's really the only thing that we've ever sprayed them with. And last year we harvested some of the best peaches I've ever had. So this is sort of an experimentation orchard, a classroom, if you will. These trees that are so massive, they're 3 years old, or they've been here and planted for 3 years. When we got them, you know, they were probably like this tall. That's encouraging to me because I can observe and gain a lot of knowledge in a short window of time. And if it goes poorly, I can replant them. I had such a hard time with planting fruit in the beginning because I was like, oh, it's just gonna take so long. But now we're getting to the point that I'm actually harvesting a lot of fruit. I just want to plant more, and I'm not afraid of taking 3 or 4 years to learn lessons on how to do it ideally for my exact circumstances. But I am eager to like do a little more work here in the orchard, maybe plant some more things now that I know kind of how this space is gonna work. I don't think I'm going to do much like food forest planting here. I'm mostly just going to keep this orchard. I will probably come in and like maybe plant some comfrey underneath the trees, but I'll decide, you know, once we get it all cleaned up and get all the cages down. I'm curious to see what it looks like and if I can resist the urge to keep adding to it. Oh, look at that. There's a Dutch pork pie pumpkin. Probably leave that. I don't know. We'll see. We mow in here, so depends on if it survives that with multiple helpers. With you know, we have our kids helping with our lawn care now, and sometimes I'll be like, I'm gonna let that grow, and then it doesn't end up getting protected. Here are the pears. Don't they look nice? I would love to hear y'all's experiences with growing fruit. Like, what are the fruits that you wish you had grown sooner? What are things you had poor experience with? Are you still stuck in the analysis paralysis of getting started with perennial things that take a while to get going? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. God bless you. Until next time.